Back on the 1946 Dodge truck, and right now it's got the hood on. I got the whole front end put back down, and I took the cab and fixed the motor mounts, or not motor mounts, the cab mounts, so that it's permanently on the frame now, and the front end is permanently mounted where it's going to be, and you can see that the body line lines up pretty good. So I took the hood off, and I had bought a scoop over the, I think it was early spring, and I stuck that on there at about the height I think I want to have it, and I'm most likely going to make a tunnel rim for it, because I can't seem to find the tunnel rim that I want. I want something with a large plenum, and most of them are made for drag racing, and I'm looking for something more for mid-range. So what I worked on today was the mount between the front end and the cab, and you can see that I put those hood pins on there. And what I'm going to have to do is make a rubber mount that goes over top of the hood pin and sort of centers that 1-inch tube onto the hood pin, and then it'll take the vibration out between the front end and the cab, because the cab is isolated on cab mounts and the front end is just sitting on the frame itself. So I'm going to have to try to isolate the whole front end from the cab, and then I got to decide how I'm going to do it with the bed, if I'm going to put rubber mounts on the bed or if I'm going to just connect it to the frame, because this has running boards, and running boards have to connect to the cab, I guess. Okay. So this week I cut that slide. You can see that's connecting the frame to the front end, and that acts as a stop, so that when I pick up the one-piece front end, it has something to stop on. Originally, when I made this frame, I made it square, and it didn't look very good inside of this whole front end, because the front end is not square. And so I cut it all up and remade the whole entire thing, so that the gap between the 1-inch tubes and the fenders would be more uniform and look better when it's flipped up in the air like this. And this is a pretty good shot. You can see the whole entire frame, and then down below here, over by the radiator, you can see there's a little support that goes from the slider that I put on down to the frame, because it's probably holding, that slider is probably holding about 110 pounds or something like that. It's not too bad, but I didn't want to have it deflect that 1-inch tube that the radiator is connected to. And here you can see the steering column, and I have to remove some more material away from the cab so that it's not quite so close to those headers. And then I have that little gear drive there that I have to connect to the steering, and I'm going to have one more universal joint in there. So it'll have 2 universal joints in that little box, and then I'll have to make a bracket for that box. So that's probably the next thing I'll work on. This is the rear cab mounts, and both of those were rotted through. They were like little pools of water, I guess, basically, because the windows would get down and the water would get back there. The rest of the floor is not too bad, but I'm going to have to replace some of the flooring, because it's got some rust holes, and then there's still a rust hole even right next to the part I just fixed. But at least it's solid enough that I can mount it, and it doesn't move when I bump it around. I'm not quite so sure I'm going to use that steering wheel, but it's probably about the right diameter, and I have probably about 8 inches there to the door. So I may move it over another inch to the left, and that should give me a little more room with the headers, and I'll probably end up with it on a little bit of an angle so that it misses the headers, and I'll have to have some kind of a sheet metal barrier to keep the heat away from it.